a portrait hung on the wall of a border pass. It showed a man with black hair. The notice beside it was plain. Whoever took this man would be paid 50,000 measures of grain and raised to noble rank. Day and night the soldiers at the gate studied every face that came through, holding each one up against the portrait. Not far from the pass, in a borrowed house, the man himself was hiding. He had been trapped there for 7 days. Ahead of him, the gate he could not cross. Behind him, the hunters. On the morning of the 7th day, the old man sheltering him opened the door and stopped where he stood. In a single night, the fugitive's hair and beard had turned white. The old man looked at him for a long while. "Heaven," he said at last, "does not mean you to die." That same day, the white-haired man walked toward the gate. The soldiers checked every face against a portrait of a man with black hair. He kept his head low and walked step by step beneath his own picture and out the other side. He was not running to save his life. He was running so that he could come back. This was the end of the 6th century BC. At the other end of the world, the men of Athens were climbing a hill outside their city to cast votes with their own hands. The first people anywhere to try governing themselves. Rome had just driven out its last king and sworn an oath over the empty throne. Never again. And at this end of the world, a man whose hair had turned white in a single night was swearing an oath of his own. He would come back, and he would dig open a king's grave. His name was Wu Zixu. The story is still inside the spring and autumn age, the age we entered 3 episodes ago. The Zhou Son of Heaven still sits at the world's nominal center, and his commands still carry no further than his own walls. Around him, the great powers hold their quarters of the board. Jin in the north, Qi in the east, Qin in the west, and in the south, the beast we met last time, the kingdom that marched an army 1,000 li to ask the weight of the cauldrons, Chu. From the day Duke Huan of Qi first raised the hegemon's banner to the morning this story begins, more than 100 years have flowed past, and the spring and autumn age is moving toward its close. This episode turns toward a corner of the board that no one had bothered to watch, the southeast, where the Yangtze meets the sea. A kingdom called Wu was rising there. No one imagined that the last great storm of the age would blow out of that corner. Wu Zixu's story begins in the palace of Chu and ends in Wu. To understand the oath, you have to go back a few years. The rot began at the root. King Ping of Chu had arranged a marriage for his crown prince, a bride from the state of Qin. The minister sent to escort her came back, went first not to the prince, but to the king, and said one thing: "The bride is beautiful." And King Ping did something with no flaw beneath it. He took his son's bride into his own chambers. A king who will reach into his own son's marriage bed keeps men around him who teach him to reach. The escorting minister was named Fei Wuji, and from that day he poured slander against the crown prince into the king's ear night after night, because if the prince ever took the throne, the first man to die would be Fei Wuji. The slander piled up, layer upon layer, until the prince fled the country. The next to fall was the prince's tutor, a man named Wu She. Wu She went to prison, but Fei Wuji reminded the king, Wu Shi has 2 sons, both of them formidable. Leave them alive, and they will be trouble." So a letter went out to the 2 brothers. "Your father is in prison. If his 2 sons come, the father lives. If they do not come, he dies." Both brothers saw through it at a glance. Go, and father and sons die together. Stay, and the father dies alone. The elder brother, Wu Shang, said, "I know it is death, and still I have to go. My father calls for me with his life. If I do not answer, and the revenge is never taken either, the whole world will laugh at our family. You go. You can carry this debt. I cannot. I will go and die beside our father. You go and live, and pay it back." In front of that letter, the 2 brothers parted, one walking toward death, the other walking out toward the debt. When the king's men came for Wu Zixu, he met them with an arrow drawn to the ear, and backed out of his own door, step by step behind the bow. From that hour, his portrait hung at every border pass in Chu. The news that his father and brother were dead reached him on the road. On that road, he also met a friend, a man named Shen Baoxu. Wu Zixu said to him, "I will overturn Chu." Shen Baoxu looked at him and answered, "If you can overturn it, then I can raise it again." There they parted. Those 2 sentences would wait many years for their reckoning. The gate where his hair turned white, the pass from the beginning of our story, was called Zhao Pass. Beyond it lay the great river. A fisherman ferried him across. On the far bank, Wu Zixu unfastened the sword at his waist, a blade worth 100 pieces of gold, and held it out. The old man would not take it. "The price on your head," he said, "is 50,000 measures of grain and a noble title. If I wanted a reward, what would I want with your sword?" There was nothing else he could give. He went east, begging as he walked, out of the lands of Chu and into the kingdom in the corner of the board. Wu. Here the men cut their hair short and tattooed their skin. They travelled by boat more than by cart, and in the eyes of the Central Plains, even Chu counted as civilized by comparison. But Wu was changing. It was young, its ambition was fresh, it had fewer rules than the old heartland, and more open doors. A newcomer, carrying a blood debt and real ability, might find every gate closed in the ancient central states. Here, one stood open. In Wu, he waited 7 years. He farmed. He played a flute in the marketplaces and begged. He had been born into one of the great houses of Chu. Generations of his family had stood beside kings, and his hands had been trained from boyhood for the bow and the writing brush. Those hands now learned the plough, and learned to be held out, palm up, in a crowd of tattooed strangers. Every coin dropped into that palm bought the same 2 things: one more day alive, and one day closer. Whatever each day cost him to bow, he bowed, and added the cost to the bill. He staked his revenge, and himself, on one of Wu's princes. For that prince, he laid a plan that ended with a short dagger hidden inside the belly of a steamed fish, carried to the table of the king of Wu. The prince took the throne and became King Helu, and Wu Zixu became one of the great ministers of the kingdom. He chose the ground, tasted the waters, and raised the walls of a new capital, shaping this kingdom of the southeast, year by year, into a weapon. Beside him stood another man, a guest from the north, from Qi, quiet, sparing with words, carrying 13 chapters on war that he had written himself. His name was Sun Wu. The weapon took 7 years to forge. In 506 BC, it was drawn. The armies of Wu drove west into Chu. They did not march the way armies had always marched. They split, feinted, appeared where no one expected them, and refused battle until the ground was theirs. A campaign with the quiet man's handwriting on every page of it. 5 battles, 5 victories, and the road ended at the capital of Chu itself. Ying. The king of Chu abandoned his city and fled. The army of Wu entered Ying, and when the city where Wu Zixu had grown up finally lay open before him, the man he had come for was not there. King Ping had been dead for 10 years. The man who had killed his father and brother lay in a tomb, beyond the reach of any sword. Wu Zixu gave the order. Open the tomb. The tomb was opened. The coffin was opened. The body of King Ping was dragged out into the light, and Wu Zixu took a whip in his hand and gave the corpse 300 lashes. 300 lashes. 16 years came down with that whip. The white night at the pass, the open palm in a stranger's marketplace, every swallowed day of it, all landing, at last, on a dead man's back. Somewhere in that burning city stood the quiet man from Qi. What Sun Wu thought as he watched, no record anywhere survives. 2 centuries later, when Sima Qian set this scene down in the records of the grand historian, he paused over it and left a sigh that is still on the page. How deep the poison of hatred can go in a man. Word reached the mountains. Shen Baoxu was alive, and he sent a message. You were a man of Chu once, a servant of this very king. To drag his body from the grave, is this not too far? Does heaven not see? The answer Wu Zixu sent back has outlived him. My day is late, he said, and my road is long. So I walk backward against the way. He did not defend himself, and he did not claim to be right. He knew exactly what he was doing, knew the road ran backward, knew each step broke something he had once believed, and he kept walking. If you want to know how much a man will burn for a blood debt, the answer is in that sentence. By the end, he had burned even the words, I am right. What remained was only, I cannot stop. Shen Baoxu sent no second message. He did something else. He went west to Qin. He came to the court of Qin to beg for his army to save Chu. Qin refused, so he stood against the wall of the Qin court and wept. He leaned on that wall without food or water and wept for 7 days and 7 nights. And the sound did not stop. On the 7th day, the lords of Qin could bear it no longer. The Duke of Qin said, The king of Chu may be unworthy, but a kingdom with such a servant does not deserve to die. Qin sent its army. The soldiers of Qin marched east. The army of Wu withdrew, and the king of Chu returned to Ying. From the very edge of extinction, Chu was pulled back. The oath to overturn Chu, Wu Zixu had kept. The oath to raise it again, Shen Baoxu had kept too. Of the 2 sentences spoken on the road years before, one had burned a royal capital, and the other carried it out of the ashes. It is worth looking twice at the hand that did the carrying. This was the first time an army of Qin had marched into the heart of the central lands to decide whether another great kingdom would live or die. The state in the west that no one rated had never contested a hegemony, never summoned an assembly of lords, never asked the weight of anything. Yet when the life of a kingdom truly hung by a thread, the hand that could tip the balance belonged to Qin. It reached out once. Then it drew back and went on being silent. Wu Zixu returned to Wu, raised as high as a subject can stand. Every oath he had sworn in his life he had kept. The blood debt of his father and brother he had collected in full, with interest, from a corpse. Only on the day the debt was settled, nothing came back. His father did not come back. His brother did not come back. The boy who had grown up in Chu did not come back either. What came back was a white-haired man, and 6 words of his own. Day late, road long, walking backward. And beside the fires of Ying, all this time, stood the quiet man from Qi. From the 5 battles to the opened tomb, Sun Wu watched it all. The 13 chapters he had written begin with a single sentence. War is the great matter of the state, the ground of life and death, the road to survival or ruin. It must be examined. And somewhere in those 13 chapters, he had set down a thought that runs exactly against this firelight. That the highest victory of all is the one that needs no battle. A man who burned through a kingdom for a debt of blood. And at his side, a man who spent his life studying how never to light the fire. One of them paid his debt in bones. The other kept 13 chapters. The world would come to know those chapters as the art of war. Next time, the book and the man who wrote it.